hello. It's currently the last day of February for me, which means it's perfect time to do like a wrap up of what did I read, what did I watch, what did I listen to. So yeah, stick around. So the plan is that I'm going to talk about my fiction books, then my non-fiction books, then my movies or my TV shows, and then we'll be done. So stick around. I said that already, haven't I? Oops. But 2 quick disclaimers, right? Number 1, don't trust my ratings. Number 2, don't trust my summaries. Don't trust Muska, basically, because my summaries are based on what I remember in my head. I don't actually remember the characters' names. All I'm saying is like, don't trust me on big decision-making lives. Life-making proof. The proof is in the pudding. Do you know what I mean? In terms of don't trust my ratings, I have read a fair share of books. The majority of them have been bad, like objectively bad pieces of literature, but the plot was so engaging and entertaining to me that I persevered. And then I tell them as if they're story times to Mariam and Sabrin, and they go, "Are you all right in the head?" And so that's kind of where I'm at the moment. And that is what it is. For example, I had to be 20 minutes into a book until I realised that the book was about werewolves and vampires. Seeing it from the vampire's point of view at some point, and he's like, I walked into the room and it smelled like dog. I went, oh, that's just what people say when a room stinks, I guess. I've never heard of that saying before. And then the girl is speaking and she goes, he growled. And I go, yeah, it sounds like a mafia book, you know, he growled. And they're part of like a biker mafia situation. So I'm like, okay, this makes sense because it's mafia, so he growled. 2 + 2 = 4. Do you know what I mean? And then like she's talking about the vampire and it goes, he snarled. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, he had sharp fangs. And I'm like, yeah. And then only once she visibly saw the man become a wolf in front of her eyeballs did she clock he was a werewolf. And that's the same time that I clocked he was a werewolf. And so I'm just telling you right now, my pea brain has been poisoned by different pieces of literature. So my ratings might not be to your standard. And honestly, I don't care. I'm rating it based on how much I enjoyed the book at the time. When I finished the book, did I enjoy it? Yes, all good. Good stars. Good English too, you know? You get the best of both worlds with me. Let's get started with my fiction books. I'm trying to read 100 books this year. It's like 2 books a week, right? So at the start of this month, I put 8 fiction books into my TBR, downloaded them onto my Kindle app on my phone because that's how I read my fiction. And yeah, the first one on my TBR and the first one that I started reading was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. Iron Flame is the 2nd book in the Empyrean series, I think it's called. I feel like everyone knows the summary, but this is Muska's summary, so it probably won't be accurate, and I feel like that's a bit of fun. But I'm going to be quick with it, so don't worry. So in Fourth Wing, the first book, you are following the story of Violet and Xaden. So Violet wanted to be a scribe in this fantasy world. There's all these different sects, and like they choose a sect to go into, and then they go through the initiation process of each one, and then they're involved in that part of society moving forward. She always wanted to be a scribe, which is like an academic, obviously a scribe, keeping historical sources and all the such. However, her mum, who's the general commander of the army, I believe, she forced her daughter to go in to the Riders, which is like the front line of the army, and they all have dragons that they're bonded to, basically. Xaden, who's the male love interest, was the son of the guy who basically led a revolution a while ago against Violet's mum and everyone else who was in charge. So in Fourth Wing, you follow their kind of like love story and also how Violet progresses through the initiation and everything like that. And at the end of Fourth Wing, there's a massive conflict which like causes Violet to question everything that she knows, and we just kind of see that follow through in Iron Flame. So that I don't feel like I can say much else without spoiling any of the book, so I'm just going to leave it there. But yeah, me personally, I gave the book a 5 out of 5. I enjoyed the book. At the end of the day, I was frustrated with Violet from pretty much all of the book. And I feel like that's often the case when I'm reading a female love interest, because they always make them so annoying or naive or just stupid. Because this is like the only fantasy books I've read, I don't really have anything else to compare it to be honest. I just know that I enjoyed it. So the 5 out of 5 felt justified to me. I'm not going to justify it to you because I don't think I physically can. So yeah, that was the first book I read for this month. Now the second book was kind of like a throwaway book. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it, but I just wanted like a palate cleanser because I read Four Threaded Iron Flame back to back and they were quite heavy and like dense and actually used brain power. So I wanted something to just be like out in one ear, out the other, you know? So the book I chose to do that is called Saving Vienna by Vicky J. So I think this is like the 4th out of a 5-book series all about these brothers. Like each book focuses on a different brother's love story. But the love interest in this book, Zane, is the youngest brother. This is kind of like a marriage of convenience, fake dating, billionaire, small town, like chuck everything in that you can sort of book. So it's about Vienna, who's a barista, and Zane, who's like a regular customer who's actually a billionaire. When we first meet them, Vienna has like collapsed in the parking lot, like she fainted, she broke her arm, and so now Zane is taking her to the hospital because he's the one who found her. And she tells him, hey, I don't have medical insurance, and he's like, okay, don't worry, I'll put you on mine, we'll just have to pretend to be married basically. So now they're pretending to be married in front of all the hospital staff, and after that they just kind of date for a while. A major plotline, by the way, in this book is that Zane has a stutter, and it's something that has like affected his confidence and his feeling of self-worth, right? So it's something he's working through in the whole book. He uses his medical insurance to get her to fix her broken arm. They're dating, and then she collapses again, gets another MRI, CT, all of that stuff, and they find out that she has a benign brain tumor, but also her mum died of brain cancer, so it's like it's too much for her, you know? But that means that they have to carry on this like fake marriage shenanigans further and then have to actually get married for the hospital, because apparently they were allowed to sweep it under the rug before. I don't know, because he's a billionaire, they can do anything, you know? I gave it a 3 out of 5 at the end of it. Honestly, I hated the ending because there was like a last minute conflict and the way it was resolved was so bad. I just hated it. I don't tend to like billionaire romances by themselves. And then also like marriage of convenience. I like marriage of convenience most of the time. The only time I will guarantee despise it is when it's based on medical insurance purposes, because it just aggravates me. So yeah, tough luck for me, you know? I liked Zane, honestly, like I liked Zane, he wasn't half bad. I just think the resolution of the conflict were just poor and poorly executed. So 3 is like my go-to. You know, I didn't hate it because there are worse books in the world, definite. And I've read my fair share of them, but wasn't anything like groundbreaking for me personally. So the next 3 books that I read were all of the books in the Made series by Danielle Laurie. So the first one was Sweetest, Oblivion that I read, but this is like, they're all mafia books. This one is like marriage of convenience, forbidden love kind of. So this is about Elena, who's known as Sweet Belly. She's like the picture perfect mafia princess basically, and like she's super nice to everyone and she's like people pleasing and like she's everything that anyone could want basically. But like 6 months ago something happens. They don't really tell you until like you go through the book, but something happens which means that when Nicholas, the love interest, after he took over his dad's crime family after he died, he went to Elena's dad to ask for her hand in marriage. Well, not really ask because it's mafia, but you know what I mean, ask for her hand in marriage. The dad basically said that she was unfit for marriage, so then instead Nicholas can marry her younger sister Adriana. There's just like a lot of tension with them throughout the book. This is like engaged to her younger sister, so that's like the forbidden love kind of thing that I was talking about. And then it's just like them going through that process. I didn't really like love this book. I didn't really like Nicholas. I didn't really like Elena either. So again, it's another 3 stars from me. Yay! Yeah, I don't think there was anything. I felt like it was just like a template mafia book, you know, like I feel like there weren't many plot twists, like it wasn't that interesting, to be honest. So then the second book in this series is called Maddest Obsession, again by Danielle Laurie. It follows 2 of the characters that we like briefly hear about in the other book. So the first one is Gianna, who's technically Nicholas's ex-stepmom. because she used to be married to Nicholas's dad, who died. And then when he died, Nicholas forced her to marry to another old guy, even though she is the same age as Nicholas, basically. And the other guy, who's the male love interest, is Christian, who's like this mysterious guy who works with Nicholas in some capacity, but no one knows how, and he just knows everything somehow. He's the guy that everyone goes to, you know? The format of this book honestly was a bit confusing for me because there were a lot of time jumps. Like half of the book is like different points in time from the past, which I guess were like pivotal in their relationship. But it's just banter like throughout, and I think the banter in this book was like so good and like so well written. It was like really, really lovely, and like I actually believed the chemistry between these two, unlike the first book personally. And then the other half of the book is like present time, what is happening. So it's like they're continuing this banter thing. Like whenever they see each other, they either pretend they don't know each other, they hate each other, they're absolutely in love with each other. And when I'm saying this, by the way, it's all Gianna doing it and like Christian just playing along and being like, wow, I'm obsessed with her, but like being like, ugh, you know, that kind of situation. Very grumpy sunshine, and I love it. I will feast on an obsessed man and a grumpy sunshine. But what I really liked is the banter between the two, as I've said like 8,000 times roughly, but also it's very much, he thought he liked control, but then when she's in his house and she moves all this stuff around, he actually doesn't mind too much. And it's like, oh, no one knows anything about him, but then she's getting him to open up. And like, it's also like, everyone thought that he was like this American man, like he is literally an FBI agent, but he's actually Russian, and he speaks Russian in front of her and she learns Russian for him. Like, it's so cute, it's so lovely. So this book, Maddest Obsession by Danielle Laurie, 5 stars for me. I loved it. Honestly, I gobbled it up. That's the only words I could use for this. It's just so good. It was delectable is the word I would use. And then the last book of the Maid series is The Darkest Temptation, obviously by Danielle Laurie. So this one follows Christian's brother called Ronan, and he stays in Russia, whereas Christian goes and becomes an FBI agent, and his whole story happens, right? So Ronan stays in Russia and is like the leader of the Russian mafia, and the love interest is this girl called Mila, who is quite isolated in this like Spanish villa, and she doesn't really know what her dad does, but she just knows that he's on business in Moscow, and she never knew who her mum was. So then she's worried about her dad because it's the only person that she actually knows. Goes to Moscow as a regular human being would do to try and find her dad, and then she gets into a bit of trouble, runs into Ronan's house, and like Ronan protects her. So while Mila is staying in Russia, Ronan is like, don't worry, I'll take care of you, you can stay in this hotel, I can buy food for you, like, why are you not wearing a coat, we're in bloody Moscow in the middle of winter? All valid questions. And so then like a whole thing is that she's vegan, so like he makes sure to give her vegan food and like vegan fur coat and like all this stuff, right? And then she's like, wow, I am actually in love with him, this is crazy. And so the whole point that she's in Moscow is to find her dad, but also to find out more about her mum. So she's finding out stuff about her mum. Her mum used to be an opera singer, all this stuff. Finds out that her mum and her dad aren't who she thought they were, but also that her dad is actually part of the mafia, which she didn't know before, which I think is just stupid. A lot of this book, I'm not gonna lie, frustrated me just because Mila seems like so stupid, and I know she was isolated like her whole life, but like there's no common sense as well. Like, she's going to Moscow in the middle of winter and she's wearing a summer dress and she has money, so like why didn't she just buy a coat on her way? And also, why is she going to Moscow? Once Mila figures out that Ronan is also part of the mafia, she gets scared and then Ronan captures her. So then it becomes a captive romance, which is like 2 words that aren't meant to be in the same sentence, you know, but that is just what mafia romances are like, you know. And honestly, you go through the whole story and at the end of it they're together, and I'm still thinking, how because how did she take a bullet for him after he's held her captive this whole time? I don't know. I think the end part when they get together was cute. If I forgot who either of them are and the relationship that they have with each other. Because it is so, not even codependent, because I feel like he is not dependent on her. She is just dependent on him. Like, she found out her dad was not who she thought he was. And then she was like, oh, okay, I'm replacing you with this other man who will take care of me. But I also don't know who he is. Like, what? It's just the most insane book. So I gave it a 2 out of 5. I know after that explanation it might be like, oh, why didn't you give it a 0? But again, my ratings are not representative of me. This is the whole of the Maid series by Danielle Laurie. Overall, I didn't really love this series, to be honest. I really loved the Maddest Obsession, but apart from that, not my cup of tea, to be honest. And the books I read actually get worse after this point, if you would believe it. So the next book that I read is one I've talked about a lot, which is Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver, which is a serial killer romance. I know. So what this book is about is that there's 2 serial killers. One, the girl called Sloane, and then the guy called Rowan. Sloane is a data scientist and Rowan is a chef, but obviously they're both serial killers as well. They both basically hunt people who are bad people, and then they kill them, and therefore they're serial killers, but they're serial killers of serial killers or paedophiles, or the scum of the earth is kind of their thing, right? How the book opens is that Sloane is hunting this paedophile, goes to his house, and as like his one last act before he dies and collapses to the ground, he basically kicks her into this cage that she can't escape. And so she thinks that she's going to die in this cage, and then Rowan comes in and was planning on killing the same guy, but then sees her and is like, wow, I'm obsessed with you, I know you, you're the orb weaver, I think she's called. And they basically just become friends. Sloane is like very hesitant about the whole situation, and Rowan is like begging on his knees, like multiple times. Sloane is like, I hate you, and then he's like, you're gonna love me at some point. When we talk about delusional, Rowan should be a case study. But it works out for him in the end, so maybe that is a lesson that we should all take to heart. Rowan decides is that to keep Sloane in his life, they're gonna have to do like some kind of meet up regularly. What do they have in common? Killing. So they decide that there's gonna be like an annual game that they're gonna do, where they basically, I think it's that his brother, Rowan's brother, chooses a town or a city or whatever, a location, and they both go to this location, find the person they need to kill, and then kill them. And then whoever kills the person gets like a point and then gets a favor by the other person. Just basically following that, there's like a turning point when they both realize that they actually like each other, because it's very friends to lovers at the most part, but serial killer, a little bit of spice to your regular friends to lovers, obviously. I can't say anything, like there's so many things in this which are insane. For example, one of the trigger warnings is accidental cannibalism. The acts of love are very different when you're a serial killer. That is what I learned through this book, I'm not gonna lie. I think that their relationship, it was quite cute, you know, it was quite cute, but I think that I didn't really learn anything about the actual characters. Like, I don't know anything about them. It was interesting because it was the first serial killer romance I've ever read. The whole book is very like graphic, as you would expect. Imagery was really good. Like, the way that she wrote everything was like, I saw it right in front of my eyeballs. I was watching a movie, that's what it felt like, you know? Just the character development was just not there, because I feel like it was more focused on like the imagery, I guess, and like the actual serial killer rather than the romance, you know? Yeah, it just wasn't like above and beyond. So I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, which I feel like was quite valid. It's definitely got a niche audience, I'll give you that. Going from that serial killer romance to this book is insane. But the next book I read was Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I had already read Love Hypothesis, like kind of at the time when it got big on Book Talk, I think. So I read that, didn't really enjoy it. To me, it felt like the whole plot line was that I'm so small, he's so big, and I hate those books. So in my head, I'd ruled out Ali Hazelwood as an author that I would like. But then I heard about Check and Mate, and I knew it was about chess, and I was like, I love chess. So I'm going to read this book. This book is about Mallory, an 18-year-old who had like ruled out chess. Like, she stopped playing when she was 14. She was like this childhood prodigy situation. Something happens which puts her off chess completely. She stops playing at 14, and now because her mum has a chronic illness, she has to work jobs and can't go to college to take care of her mum and also her 2 younger sisters. Mallory's best friend convinces her to join this charity chess tournament, and so they're going against random people, and wow, who would have guessed it? Mallory gets paired against Nolan, who's like the best chess player in the world, and he's like 20 years old, you know? Nolan's whole reputation is that like he's very charismatic, but he gets angry really, really easily, and he hasn't lost the game in like the longest time. In a shock turn of events, Mallory beats Nolan, and Nolan's quite calm about it, and he's like now intrigued by her basically. Then Mallory just carries on her normal life. She's like working as a car mechanic and all this stuff. And then the people who organise that charity chess tournament go up to her and it's like, you are so amazing, we want you to have this fellowship, or we'll pay you to play chess for a whole year. And at the start she's like very, very hesitant because she's ruled out chess for a reason, like she's not going back. Finally she folds and she's like, okay, I will, because the money is worth it in the long run. And then so she becomes closer to Nolan and all of this stuff, and then they become friends and then they fall in love, and it's yay, yay, yay. Yeah, honestly, I didn't really like the book. Firstly, Mallory just annoyed me as just the character. There was a lot of miscommunication, and how could he ever like me? And all of that stuff. And there's a big turning point when she finally actually speaks to her mum and sisters, which changed the whole trajectory of the book, which I did appreciate, but it just pissed me off that it hadn't happened earlier. She is 18 years old, so it does make sense in the grand scheme of things. And again, I think this is why I just can't do YA, but also like the same dynamic and the same stupidity can be applied to like Things We Never Got Over, or whatever it's called, by Lucy Score, where that's about 40-year-old people when one of the guy pisses in his own garden. No. So maybe people are just stupid continuously, regardless of age. Isn't that such a nice view of humanity? Anyways, that wasn't actually my biggest qualm. My biggest qualm was there were 2 big ones. Okay? First, I absolutely despised the way they spoke about the teenage sister. I do understand that she's making a lot of sacrifices for her younger sisters, but not at any point does she think how her younger sisters feel. Teenage one specifically, like she keeps on getting angry at her for having feelings, and I get that she's not presenting them in like an articulate way, but she is a teenager. Like that is like, you were a teenager as well, like you're the one who at 14, like I don't get it. She has no sympathy for her own sister, and I really just didn't like that. The other thing that really pissed me off is when Mallory spoke about her and Nolan, it was very pretentious. Multiple times, she was talking about her own friends and Nolan's friends and saying they can't keep up with us. Like, we're just so above and beyond. I'm gonna find the exact quote, 1 second. So this is the quote. Nolan trains with all of us, blah 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 blah, but his time with the others seems almost like an afterthought. Brief interludes in the sea of his days, which are spent with me. Okay, I could take that and be like, that was quite cute, kind of, but also don't dismiss his best friends. But anyways, let's carry on. It's because there are things they don't see, combinations and tactics that elude them and seem to click only in Maya and Nolan's heads. Let's just go watch Doom Patrol while the grown-ups work, Emil said one night, after it became clear that no one could keep up with us. I don't like it. I don't like that she speaks to her friends like that. It's not even her friends, her boyfriend's friends. Like, I'm not a fan of it. All in all, did not enjoy Mallory as a character or the way that she spoke about the people around her. It took me 4 days to read 200 pages, okay? And then I had to convince myself 4 days later, when I couldn't read the book anymore because I dragged my feet through those pages, to read the rest of the book was another 200 pages, and I just banged it all out, and I had to. Because after like 60%, it was actually like okay and digestible. But the first 60%, it was just so frustrating that I had to like pull myself up by the bootstraps. Again, another idiom I'm not using correctly. Like any of the other books in this list, right, of books that I've read, I didn't have an issue with going through with them. Like, even Darkest Temptation, which was such like a, wow, this, like, I feel disgusted because the whole book is Stockholm Syndrome. That's literally what this book is. But I still read it quite quickly, just because I wanted it to get over. But this one, I didn't even want it to get over. I just wish I hadn't picked it up in the first place. And saying all that, I still rated it 3 out of 5. So maybe I should shut up. But I feel like I couldn't rate chess any lower. Like, I feel like I was doing a disservice to chess, because I love chess. But also, Ali Hazelwood books always are, like, very, to me at least, like, millennial tries to write Gen Z and currently relevant stuff. I think this person's Goodreads review, like, summarizes it for me, right? She gave it a 1.5 stars, and then she said, it's basically if the Queen's Gambit was made for YN by a millennial. So accurate. And I feel like the only reason that she wrote chess is because chess got, like, really big on TikTok, right? She's just like, oh yeah, Magnus Carlsen. Yeah, that's literally what she's done. Dior Sauvage. Scalp massage ASMR. Discord. What? Like, it feels like there's product placement in a book. Like, it's so weird. But yeah, 3 stars. I know it sounds like I should have given it a 1 star based on all of my criticisms, but again, my ratings don't work like that, so tough luck. Okay, now, this is when serious business. This is the best piece of literature I've ever read. And not because only I found it really, like, enjoyable, but because it was just a good piece of writing. Like, it was really good. And that book was Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenia. When I tell you, 6-star read. Oh, I spoiled it, but I feel like it was quite big. 6-star read. It weren't even 5 stars. Like, this will... If you haven't read this book, I'm telling you, you have to read this. It is so good. Like, it's so... Okay, are you ready for my explanation? Because it's going to be bad, but that's fine. This is editing my script at 6 AM, yeah? Okay, the sun has just risen. I was like, why was it 2.5 hours of footage? Half an hour I spent trying to explain this book, and I don't even think I did it justice at the end of this. So I need to cut out, like, however many minutes. I'm scared for my well-being, but I'm not going to sleep until I finish this, I'm not going to lie. And that is what they call dedication to the craft. Oh, you're going to get that in a bit. Just give it a second. So basically, in this, like, alternate dystopian reality, when someone is in prison, they can, instead of serving their sentence for whatever crime they committed or did not commit, they can enroll, even though that's not the right word, into this CAPE program, which is basically like a sports entertainment situation, but it's basically like gladiator battles where they fight to the death. And they basically have these chain gangs, which is why it's called Chain Gang All-Stars. Multiple chain gangs, so it's basically a group of people who are meant to be like your family, and you can't go against someone in your family in these challenges, but you will get a mystery opponent, basically, who's someone else who is enrolled in the CAPE program, and then they have to fight to the death. And if you survive 3 years of this CAPE program, then you're what they call high freed, which is basically you have freedom. Low freed is you've been killed. So that's kind of the concept of the book, right? Which is obviously in itself like a very powerful storyline, right? This whole gladiator thing is aired all the time, and it's a massive part of society, and it's like a profit building situation. Like, different fighters are sponsored by different things, and it seems so absurd and like so dystopian. But as you're reading, there's all these little footnotes which are referencing actual cases in real life which have the same storyline. And so it's very, I wouldn't say eye-opening, because this is all stuff I already knew, but reading it in a fiction book which is meant to be dystopian, but it's not actually that far away from actual real life and how the prison system works today, it's just, I don't know, I'm speechless. That's what I'm going to say. And so the whole plot line, the whole environment is so absurd, and it's meant to be like very unnerving, right? But I think what was so terrific about this book was the way in which the story was told, because the focus was so much on characters rather than plotline, which I think that's what literary fiction is, right? And I've never read a book like that before. Like, it's always about the plotline for me, and usually I hate the characters, which is clearly the issue in a lot of books I've been reading. But this was like, obviously these characters, right, committed crimes. The prison system in reality today, but also even more, the prison system in this alternate reality is very stuck on this dichotomy between good and bad. So you hear someone has murdered someone, it's bad. Full stop, it's bad, there's no questions about it, right? But then because we're hearing it from their perspectives, there's more discussion about what it is to be a human, what it is to be a person. Like, it's very intriguing. I don't know what the adjectives are. I don't think I have them in my vocabulary to explain this book to you, unfortunately. I think you need to go to someone more educated than me to like fully grasp the level of this book. I think what is so moving about this book is that each chapter you hear from like another person, like people you wouldn't expect, right? But also, like, I read dual POV all the time, you know? But firstly, this book doesn't tell you who you're hearing from when the chapter starts. You gotta use context clues and all that stuff, right? And secondly, you hear so many points of views. One, you only have one chapter, there's some consistent characters throughout, right? So the two main characters are Loretta and Hamara, right? And you also, their whole romance was really, really interesting. I think a lot of books that I read like simplify a lot. Like simplify a character, simplify a part of life, like just simplify when humans are complex beings, you know? Whereas this book, I feel like, saw those complexities and was like, let's delve into those a bit deeper. I think that was what was so moving. I can't think of a proper adjective about this book, you know? You hear about Loretta and Hamara and their experiences and like from their perspectives. And obviously they have both different backstories, so you see how that influences everything. But then you also hear from like the host of the whole game show, the fact that it's considered that is crazy, right? Then you hear about the diehard fans and like their perspectives on all this stuff, which further exemplifies like the relation between race and gender and entertainment, and using especially black women as a form of entertainment, especially in this system. You hear about people who work within this system, so like the bus driver that has to drive them to places. You hear about the abolitionists within this, because obviously this isn't like an accepted thing. It's a common form of entertainment for a lot of people, but there's people protesting still, obviously. You also hear about these diehard fans' wife. Like, that was a really interesting storyline for me, because she started off with hating this whole thing and then she became obsessed. The character that like, I guess, moved me the most was Simon J. Craft. That was what I meant when I said I was dedicated to my craft, by the way. Not my best joke ever, by a long shot, but you gotta take what you're given at 7:25 a.m. in the morning. Basically, he is imprisoned and he's part of this illegal fighting ring that the guards have, basically, where they all choose someone and they back them in this fight and they like train them, okay, to fight for them. How Simon J. Craft is treated is like absolutely abominable. And for example, there's this thing called the influencer, actually like this black rod which they stick in people's necks, and it like does something with the neurons where it literally, like, the maximum amount of pain you can feel, it does that. And so how the guard that chose Simon J. Craft is, that's how he just uses this. He just uses it as like a training mechanism. He's like, it's building your muscles and all of this stuff, but obviously it's doing like irreversible damage to him. Like, both physically but also mentally, right? And so at the start, because everything is from first person point of view, right, depending on who, like, regardless of who the person is. And so his, like, at the start, you're hearing from him properly, like you're hearing him as if I'm speaking to you, you know? And then over time, every time we hear from him more, his sentences are becoming shorter. He's not remembering his name anymore. He keeps on saying, I'm Simon J. Craft, I'm Simon J. Craft. That's one of like 3 sentences he knows. And he keeps on apologizing to people, even though he doesn't need to. You know, these are things that have been ingrained in him because of what this guard has done, you know? And so he no longer knows what the J in his name, Simon J. Craft, stands for. And so you just see it more and more. And then this other guard is like, bro, you're already fighting these people. You'll actually survive better if you enroll in this CAPE program. Like, you just need to say that you're mentally sane enough to do this. Okay? And so he signs the papers. He's like, I need to get out of here, basically. And then he's paired up with this other guy whose arm got chopped off by a guard for helping another prisoner. And so they've obviously both had a lot of damage done by guards in prison. And now they become like a tag team, basically. And just seeing the deterioration of Simon is like the most heartbreaking thing ever, because at the end his chapters are literally just like him trying to figure out what the J in his name stands for, and it's literally just him going jungle, jump, da 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 da, and just listing, like, that's just his chapters. Like, before he had like massive long chapters about like what are humans, and actually like, and it's just so heartbreaking. And every time I read his chapter I was like, I am going to cry, because this is the most insane thing ever, and I'm about to cry again and I don't want to. So yeah, very much recommend this book. Yeah, it's just the most moving, the most book you could ever imagine. And that's my summary. It's such a bad summary, but it's just too good of a book. You just need to read it, I beg you, with everything inside me. And it's only like 400 pages. I don't know how it is. Wow. Everything was just wow. And honestly, the whole time I was reading it, I was like, how is this book gonna end? Like, I know for a fact there's not going to be a resolution where this whole system is abolished, right? There's not going to be a solution like that, and I don't know what the solution is. And I think the ending of it was perfect in that sense, even though it was frustrating. And yeah, it was just, I like the way, because obviously they're talking about prison abolition like a lot, and obviously, and I think a lot of that, if you thought about that, it wouldn't even have to be in a dystopian alternate reality. You could have put that in any book about activism and it would have stuck the same. And I think the way that they chatted about all of that was so powerful as well. And I just learned a lot, which I didn't know I actually could do from a fiction book. So that really like shocked me, but like in the best way possible. And so once again, I plead you, if you're going to take one thing away from this bloody long video, it's read Chain Gang All Stars. For everyone's benefit. It's like, if you can, because it's a very heavy book, like very, very heavy, but beautiful in the most heart-wrenching way. That's how I'm going to explain it. And again, I don't know how I'm going to go from that book to this book. But next and last, my 8th book that I read, which I finished like a couple hours ago, is Marrow by Brynne Weaver. Brynne Weaver, you've heard that name before? Yes, it's a serial killer lady. It's actually by Trisha Wolfe and Brynne Weaver, but I read it because it was by Brynne Weaver. This book is basically about this girl called Kyrie, who is a microbiologist, I believe. She's a lecturer at this university, and there's also this other lecturer called Jack, and he's a forensic archaeologist, scientist guy. Kind of like a enemies to lovers, I don't even know if you can call it that. She just really doesn't like him. He's just been rude, basically, and very dismissive of her for the past 3 years or whatever that they've been working together. even though she has done like a lot for the forensics department, and she's like getting an award on the first time that we see her about. And then Jack finds Kyrie basically framing him for a murder, okay? And then so he finds out that she knows that he's a serial killer, and then he's basically holding it over his head, and then he is holding her confession to these murders over her head. So they've basically got leverage against one another, and then it just goes from there basically, and you just find out about their backstory and how they actually knew each other beforehand, and then they fall in love. When I tell you, okay, the other book, okay, Butcher and Blackbird, I gave it a 4 stars, okay? I'm actually not mad about that review. I know they're serial killers, okay, cool, but they're killing other serial killers. They're killing bad people. These guys, no. Especially the guy, right? Jack is the worst, because what he does is he draws bones, okay? He is a forensics guy, it makes sense. He draws a bone. Here is a female that he has drawn. He looks across the group and he goes, you look like you have a female that looks like that, so I'm going to kill you so I can get your female and then frame it next to the drawing that I did. And then they explain that by saying that he's a psychopath and he can't feel love. Kyrie is a bit better because she's trying to kill people who like drug their dates and stuff. Okay. But also she goes as far as going, you're a frat boy. You look like you would. Dead. Okay, and then it gets worse because, as I said, this book I read like a couple of hours ago and I rated it 3 stars, but now thinking back, I'm going to lower that to a 2. So I'm sorry for... That's what I mean though. That was just proof, okay? And that is all the fiction books I read in February. Now we're on to non-fiction. These are the 2 non-fiction books I wanted to read this month. This is the one I finished, and then I've started this one, so I won't fully go into this one, but I'll start with this one obviously. So, how I read non-fiction books is whenever I leave the house, I just take this with me and then I read it whenever I can. It's called Against Borders, The Case for Abolition. It's by Gracie May Bradley and Luke Donorona. This book is basically, I would say, like a summary of all the arguments for abolishing borders. This is a discussion that I'm quite familiar with personally, so a lot of this book was just like regurgitating arguments that I already knew. So in that sense, it was quite helpful in like a summary, reflection, review. What I found most valuable personally was the latter half of the book. They were talking about how algorithms and data is involved in borders nowadays, but also in the grand scheme of stuff, and really expanded my ideas, I guess, because I hadn't really discussed that in much depth. It's in my head with the voices inside of my head before, so it was nice kind of creating a new realm in this debate that I didn't really think was as important as it actually is once they explained it to me. So I really appreciated that. And also there's a whole section of the book dedicated to types of reforms. So they distinguish reformist reforms and non-reformist reforms. So reformist reforms are basically changes that can be made within the system, but it doesn't challenge the system. Whereas non-reformist reforms are changes against the system in a sense. They're like steps in the process towards fully abolishing the system as a whole. And so I hadn't like heard of those terms before, but I had heard of those ideas, so it was nice. But in terms of the ideas, and that's definitely something I'm going to carry forward whenever I think about reforms in general, not even relating to borders, to be honest. I also really appreciated the connections that they made between prison abolition and border abolition. And there was a really important quote I remember I was reading this on the tube, like in front of Hamida, and I pointed to it. I was like, wow, and she was like, wow, my eyes are misty from still speaking about Chain Gang All Stars. Can you even imagine? But yeah. And what is prison if not a form of internal deportation? And I was like, wow, that is so true. And I have spoken about that idea quite a lot in university. So yeah, it was kind of nice. I love when that happens because I can like connect the dots. And then this also relates sort of to Chain Gang All Stars. Like the theme of this month for Muska was prison and border abolition. And even like in Chain Gang All Stars, for example, they explicitly made the connection between prison abolition and border abolition. And I think that's like connecting different struggles and connecting different forms of activism together is like where change really happened. I ended up giving this book a 4.5 stars. Originally I think I gave it a 4-star, but then when I was writing my full review I had to just like reflect for a second, and I think I put it as a 4 just because I thought I would have learnt more, but I feel like I can't actually blame the book on that because the target, or like if you read that Against Borders, the Case for Abolition, like that is also for people who don't know anything about abolition of borders. So I think it's extremely valuable if you've like not had proper lengthy discussions about this. Like this is a very great introduction book, but also I think it's very valuable in the data and algorithms talk that they were saying, as I said. So that's why I upped it to 4.5. Why it still wasn't a 5-star for me personally is because there's 2 chapters in here which they call interludes, which one of them is basically a dystopian and one of them is a utopian, like a future, right? And I do understand the purpose of it in the book, where it's like, well, if we do this, this could happen, but if we could do this, then this would happen, right? But I think it just really like about like real issues, and then the way that they were speaking about it was like 500 years into the future where we've got extraterrestrial, and it was like, I don't know, it felt a bit unnerving because it just came out of nowhere, to be honest, and I wanted to just skip those chapters, but they referenced them later on as well, so it felt important to have that context, but I just did not enjoy those chapters as much. And this is the one that I've started. So this is, firstly, let's just appreciate this cover. Both these covers are gorgeous. And I'm so excited to choose my other book. I'm just going to roll this over for March because I didn't get to finish it this month. But also this is a floppy book and I really don't like floppy books. Like it's not my cup of tea, but I've got to persevere because it is a good book so far. So it's called What If Latin America Ruled the World, and it's by Oscar Guardiola Rivera. I am 38 pages in out of roughly 400, so 10%, not half bad, you know. I've already learned so much, and why I chose this book is I don't know much about Latin America, like at all, and that's like a massive blind spot in my knowledge of the world, to be honest with you, which is why I picked up this book. I also have another book about Latin America and I forgot what it's called. I was gonna cut that out, but the book is called The Forgotten Continent, and I thought that was quite ironic, so yeah, hilarious once again. But that's another one that I do want to read close at some point. I'm still in the chapter where they're talking about indigenous populations, and already that I've learned so much. Like, this is what my pages are looking like highlight, I need to learn more about that, these are some good quotes, like I am learning. When I tell you I'm absorbing this information like a sponge, but I could not tell you the thing I've learned. It's bad. But put me in a debate and I will pull some facts out of my brain. Really, really amazing. And I think the only thing, which obviously isn't the fault of the book, is this was written in 2010. And so I'm just interested, I think, about how, which is what I'm going to research more after I finish this whole book, is about how COVID has influenced this, because all of the discussion that's happened so far is about the ideology of Latin America rather than the practicality, like what has Latin America done in contrast to other countries that will make it so important, and how the South will bring the North into the 22nd century, you know. So currently they're talking about the idea of the global south and the difference in ideology. So they're talking about the importance of community and stuff, and I think that was highlighted so much during COVID that like I want like an updated version where they talk about that and like how that has influenced Latin America's place in the world, like on an international scale, because I think that's so important. So I guess I'll have to go on my own and research that after I finish this book, but I'm really, really enjoying it so far. It's a very dense book. Like every sentence is a new piece of information for me, but that's obviously because I have no knowledge basically about Latin America as of now. Watch in a month, I'll be a different person, you know? But yeah, so it's taking me a bit longer to read, but that's the same with most non-fiction books, to be honest. Like I speed through fiction quite quickly, whereas non-fiction, it's like I want to absorb it properly, you know? I like make sure it sticks with me. So yeah, I can't give that a rating obviously, but I'm enjoying it so far. So that's both the non-fiction books I wanted to show you, and I can't wait until March. I'm gonna pick my TBR right after this and record that, so get excited because I don't know when that's coming out either, but probably sometime soon. So yeah. Cool, now we can do movies. I wasn't planning on watching any movies, as I said, or TV shows, but I did watch 2 movies. The first movie I watched with Angela and Hamida, okay? This was watching it at Angela's house because our plans had changed, and so we were just going to chill and watch a movie. And for some reason, Hamida was like, Buska has movies she wants to watch, which isn't incorrect. However, when I say I have movies I want to watch, this means I've seen a clip on TikTok and I'm like, engaging, cool. There's a little Subway Surfers ad on the side. I'm putting it on my list, and then it's on my list. And so now I was tasked with choosing one on the hundreds of lists or whatever, however many there are on my list, and I had to choose one, okay? And so I chose the one that I knew the most about because I didn't want to risk it. And I don't know if that was the correct choice because I chose the movie called The Pod Generation. What this is it's meant to be like 40, 50 years in the future, like not long at all. But I think the point of it is to show the potential threats of AI. I don't know. So the concept of the movie is that when women are rich enough, they can basically enroll to, instead of carrying their baby like in their belly, they can carry their baby in this pod. And it literally looks like a Kinder egg, but like big, you know? And there's basically this company, like this very dystopian company, which these rich women go to, and they pay like 20k to have a child in this pod. And then the baby grows up in the pod, and then when it's ready to be birthed, is then given to the mum, basically. And so we're following the storyline of Rachel and Alvy. And so Rachel is like this corporate girly basically, and she's getting a promotion that will include a package to have a kid using this pod thing. Whereas Alvy is like obsessed with nature and is like against AI basically. They have like this Alexa thing in their house, and like you can tell already their relationship with AI based on how they are speaking to that guy, the Alexa thing, you know? It's dystopian in the sense that like trees are getting abolished, and instead of trees we're going to do holograms of trees, and instead of people needing oxygen they can have like, they can pay like £1, and then there's like these boxes full of cacti, and then you put a little oxygen mask on and you breathe in the oxygen from that. And that's what corporate people do on their break times instead of like having conversations, you know? Yeah, so we go along their story about how Rachel wants to have a kid using this pod thing, and Alvy is very against it because obviously he's against AI. But then they decide to do it, and then going through that whole process, and Alvy bonding with the kid and Rachel still struggling with it, and it's just like going through that whole storyline. When I tell you, did not hit its mark, okay? I think what it was trying to do was firstly to comment on feminism and its relationship with capitalism, okay? Because the whole idea of maternity leave is abolished once you have a pod. That's why they got this promotion, right? So that she can work longer. She doesn't have to take out these months to take care of this baby and take care of herself. And so I do get that the point of it is to like comment on capitalism and women within capitalism. And I also get that it's meant to make a comment on AI. Don't really still understand what that comment was meant to be, but I do understand that was part of the point. I think none of it did what it wanted to do. I think it was very distasteful in a lot of senses. I don't know if it was meant to be feminist in its sense, but it was not. I will tell you that for a fact. And I think everything was just confusing because like they made it appear as if during Rachel and Alvy's lifetime these changes have happened, right? Like before, Alvy keeps on referencing back to a time when trees were like a big thing and now they're not, which is insane. But yeah, so it's a change that's happened through their lifetime, and they have such different worldviews, but they're still together, and it just doesn't make sense to me. And also, Rachel is so stubborn in this whole discussion about having a child, and Alvy is so open to compromise, but instead of compromising, he's just being walked all over, and she is genuinely just not listening to him. And it's really frustrating during the whole movie because he's giving very valid points as to why he feels uncomfortable with this whole situation. And I think she knew that he was uncomfortable because she did half of this process behind his back. And she signed up for this and paid a deposit to have a child behind his back. That is insane to me. I don't think that's alright in any sense. I think it's just, the whole thing just didn't hit its mark. I didn't appreciate any of the commentary it did. It was just, everything fell short. And I thought it was just going to do more than it actually did. Both Hamida and Angela did not enjoy it either. And I ended up rating it a 1 star. So yeah, that's the first movie I watched. The other movie that I watched was with Mariam, and that was Anyone But You. So basically this whole movie is like miscommunication trope, like to another level. Like it's just really frustrating because usually that's like in books, and so you can just like, you know, but seeing it in real life on the screen is unnerving, to say the least. Just wanted to pop in to say this is the 3rd time I used unnerving in this video, which is way too many. I don't think I've ever used that word before, and now I'm just willy-nilly using it. I don't even know if I'm using it right, but it sounds smart, so I'm gonna run with it. The girl played by Sydney Sweeney is called B, and then the guy played by Glenn Powell is called Ben, okay? And it's basically they just like meet cute in this like cafe thing, and then they like went back to Ben's house and then just chatted through the night, and they both were like, we like each other. And for some reason B decides to leave at the end of the night, right? And you're like, why would you do that? She's calling her friend and she's explaining it, and then she's like, wait, why did I leave, you dumbass? Anyways, she turns back and she walks into Ben speaking to his friend Pete. Underrated character, may I add. They really did him dirty with his whole comedic relief act. It just wasn't doing what it was meant to be doing. And he's just like dissing her in front of Pete. And then so she goes home and is like, wow, I hate him. And then her later down the line, fast forward, B's sister, Hallie, is getting married to Ben's best friend Pete, yeah? Pete's sister, Claudia, who's basically Ben's best friend as well. Hallie and Claudia are getting married, right? And now B and Ben are going to be the maid of honor and best man respectively. Also caused the issue for me because why is your own brother not your best man? Why is your best friend your best man but also your brother's best friend? Like what? It didn't make sense to me because your brother's right there. Anyways, so now B and Ben are like reconnected and they both still hate each other. All the people who weren't related to either, like the only friends at the wedding were Claudia's friends, not Hallie's friends. She didn't have friends. It was really sad. But anyways, so before the wedding, all of these like, all of the family members, so like B's parents and like Claudia's parents, because I don't know where Ben's parents are, but whatever, like they're all trying to get B and Ben together, Okay, and then they figure out about this, so then they like go along with it to make the wedding easier. So it's like fake dating, right? And that's where like the comedy part is meant to come in, but it's just not funny at all. It's just cringe. Yeah, and then they like just go through the motions to like reveal that they're not actually together, and then realize that they actually do like each other, and then yeah, and like he conquers his fear of heights for her, and yeah, it was just like, and she reveals deep dark secrets to him. It's just like, it was just miscommunication. Like, I thought it was gonna give more, and I know that Mariam's point of it was just to be like, we're just gonna laugh at this, and I did laugh at it, but I was like, wow, that was insane at the end of it, you know. But yeah, so I ended up giving that 2 stars because it's better than the Pod Generation, because I knew what I was getting into basically. Whereas the Pod Generation, I thought it was going to be a good, like, kind of political commentary, but also dystopia. And good was not in the sentence, so yeah. So, thank you for watching. That was a long one. I have a lot of editing to do. But, yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that. We've talked about what fiction books I read, what non-fiction book I read, what movies I watched. I hope you enjoyed, and moral of the story, read Chain Gang All Stars. Just read it. I'm begging ya. I'm begging ya. Thank you so much. I shall see you later, and I'm about to pick out my March TBR, so I'm excited. I hope you are too.